Hey Talking fam, and welcome to another Talking Sports video. And today we'll be taking a look at the top 10 fantasy ESPN running backs. And today we have a good list. We have players like DeAndre Swift, Leonard Fournette, Najee Harris, all in this list, as well as some of the big names such as JT, CMC, and King Henry. So let's take a look. All right, at number one, we have JT, Jonathan Taylor. And last year, he had 337 points in PPR. And with 1,811 yards, 18 touchdowns, 360 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. I mean, he was one of the best running backs in the league last year. And I think JT does deserve to be a number one pick in the draft. If he does get taken, or in the first round, he should be number one overall. Next up at number two, you have CMC, and he's been injured this is kind of a lottery pick, if you will. He's been injured the last few seasons, and he only had 90 points last year with 442 rushing yards and a touchdown and 343 receiving yards with a touchdown. He had 2 total touchdowns with just a little bit, about 800 yards, about 785, and total yards with 2 touchdowns. I think that's not so good. Next up at number 3, we have Chargers running back Austin Ekeler. And Austin Ekeler last season had more points than JT. He had 343 points, but he had a significant less amount of yards. He had 911 yards with 12 touchdowns, and he had 647 receiving yards with 8 touchdowns. Now, with that, you would have only had about 1,500 yards total, while JT had about 2,200 total yards. Next up, we have Derrick Henry, and he was injured last season too. He only played the first 8.5 games, so he had about 193 points last year, and he had 911 yards and 12 touchdowns with 647 receiving yards and 8 touchdowns. So he already had 20 touchdowns through the first 8.5 games. Now that is very good if you're King James. And sorry, I might have misspoke there. He had 937 yards with 10 touchdowns and 154 receiving yards with no touchdowns. Sorry, that might have been over the top there. But Derrick Henry with about 1,000 rushing yards, 1,000 total yards in his first 8.5 games before he was injured. That's pretty good. 10 touchdowns in the first 8 games as well is pretty good. So give him credit. He was also injured. At number 5, we have Dalvin Cook. And Dalvin Cook has 206 points last year. No, wait. Oh, guys, I'm such a mess. Number 5 is Najee Harris. Najee Harris had 300 points last year with 1,200 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns, 467 receiving yards with 3 touchdowns. So he had 10 total yards with about 1,600, 10 total touchdowns with 1,600 total yards. And Najee Harris was a rookie last year, so he showed his dominance in his first year with some good fantasy points. So I'll give it to him. He did very good. Next up at number 7, number 6, we have Dalvin Cook, and Dalvin Cook had 206 points last year. And he had about 1,159 rushing yards with 6 touchdowns and 224 receiving yards. And he was injured he only played 13 games, and 206 points is pretty good for that many games. So I'll give him that. At number 7, we have Joe Mixon, and Joe Mixon with 287 points last year, 1,205 yards, 13 touchdowns with 314 receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns added on. So he had about 1,500 yards with 16 total touchdowns. Next, at number 8, we have DeAndre Swift, the Lions running back, and he had 208 points last year, 617 yards and 5 touchdowns, and 452 receiving yards with 2 touchdowns. So that's about 1,100 total yards and about 7 total touchdowns. At number 9, we have injured running back last year, Alvin Kamara. And he had 234 points with 898 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns, and about 439 receiving yards with 5 touchdowns. So he had about 1,300 yards with 9 total touchdowns as well. Now at number 10, we have Buccaneers running back Leonard Fournette. And he had about 255 total touchdowns last year. And his rushing yards was low. He only had about 812 yards with 8 touchdowns. His receiving yards was 454 with 2 touchdowns. So he had about 1,300 yards with 10 total touchdowns. And his rushing yards is low probably because you have Tom Brady as the quarterback. Tom Brady is the GOAT of passing. Like, you would like to pass more than running if your quarterback is so good at passing. So that is going to be today's video. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe down below. I would really appreciate it. See you guys in the next one. Peace.